Hello, welcome to Mastering Excel Functions. As we move through this Excel series, I'll interject comments defined as pro tips. This is simply additional information and terminology that'll make you look like an Excel superstar. Feel free to borrow and share. By the way, pro tip number 1, anything within the open and close brackets of a function is called an argument, and that's true for all Excel functions. I've also attempted to incorporate the following standards. I'll begin by giving a brief description of each function while displaying the correct syntax for that function, including which arguments are required and the maximum number of arguments allowed. Below the syntax, there will be at least one or more examples. These examples will be color-coded to match border colors in the data provided. This way, I can demonstrate the use of each function as well as where I might typically place it. Okay. Today's function is the sums. We'll look at sum, then Sumif, next Sumifs. We'll look at Autosum feature, and then we'll finish up with sums in the status bar. That's it, folks. Let's get started. Pro tip number 2. You'll often hear the term function and formula used interchangeably. The way I like to keep these terms straight is sum open bracket close bracket is a function. But when I add arguments between the brackets, it becomes a formula. This worksheet includes a table with the correct syntax for the sum function. Column A of this table tells the location in our data table we'll be placing each formula. Columns B through E defines the formula to be placed. And column F through G contains our expected result. The sum function adds values. You can add individual values, cell references, ranges, or a combination of all three. The correct syntax for sum is equal sum open bracket number 1 comma number 2 close bracket. In this case, the first argument has been colored red to highlight that it is required. Said function will not work without this argument. Note, Excel does not use color to make that distinction though. It uses square brackets to define optional arguments. Additionally, the maximum number of arguments required for the sum function is 255. You'll see in cell A4 I've not placed a cell reference. Instead, an A or not applicable is displayed. That's because I'll demonstrate the use of this example, but will not use it in our data table. In example 1, Excel assumes all values between the brackets and separated by commas are numbers and returns the sum of those numbers. In example 2, which we will place in cell D14, this example will return the sum of values in the range D12 to D13. Here's another pro tip. Using a range in the sum function is considered best practice. Inserting or deleting rows and/or columns within your range will not break your formula. Example 3, which is placed in cell D25, allows us to sum values in a non-contiguous range using the plus key between each cell reference. Example 4, placed in cell L25, is the same as example 3, but uses commas between each cell reference. Okay, We've looked at the basic sum function and its multiple syntax options. What if we need to do addition based on a certain criteria? Looking at our data table, I've decided I'd like to know how many items in our list have kilogram as the unit of measure. So I'm going to use the SUMIF function. Its syntax is equals SUMIF, open bracket, range, comma, criteria, comma, with the optional sum range. The argument range is looking for the data elements you want to query or test, i.e., in this case, the unit column, or specifically, reference cells B12 through B23. Argument criteria is the value you're testing for. In this circumstance, we're using the text string kg. Argument sum range is telling Excel which values you want it to add up. This is an optional argument, and you'll see what happens if we don't provide it in our second example. So this formula tells Excel to look in the range B12 to B23 for all the instances of the text kg. Upon finding that text, we're telling Excel to then sum up the associated values in the range D12 to D23. What I'm expecting and what Excel returns is the value of 10, because it found 5 units of red grapes and 5 units of green grapes, both that had the unit of measure kg. Had we not provided a sum range in this example, Excel would have returned a 0. This is a simple example, and we can see that there are 2 products that have a kg unit of measure. So why didn't we at least get the value of 2? The straight answer is we're asking Excel to sum or to add values together, and it cannot add kg to kg because kg is text, not numeric. Make sense? In our next example, we leave out the optional sum range, but ensure that the range we're looking at is numeric and that the test or criteria is also numeric. In this case, we're asking Excel to look in the range C12 to C23 and add up all the values of $8.80. Remember, Excel will add them together because we're using the sum function. If we wanted to know how many items had a price of $8.80, we'd be better off using the count function. We'll look at that another day. As you can see, Excel finds only 2 items with the price of $8.80, adds them together, and returns a value of $17.60. Okay, that was cool. But what if we have more than one criteria? What if we wanted to know the number of items we have that have a unit of measure of each, where the price is more than $1? I think it was in version 2003, maybe 2007. Microsoft added a whole series of functions that are the plurals of their original. Today we'll look at the plural of SUMIF, its cool cousin, Sumifs. Sumifs syntax is =SUMIFS, open bracket, sum range, comma, criteria range 1, comma, criteria 1, comma, criteria range 2, comma, criteria 2, close bracket. Notice there are no square brackets around criteria range 2 and criteria 2. I've tested and these are optional arguments. I think. I could be wrong, but I think this is an error in the program. Let's look at our first example. We're looking for the sum of counts. If the unit is equal to each and the price is greater than 1. Our sum range, i.e., what we want Excel to add up, in this case is the count values in D12 through D23. Now that we have that, we can worry about the criteria we want to test. Our first criteria range is B12 through B23, and the criteria we're going to test here is for the value EA or each. Our second criteria range is C12 through C23, where we'll test for a value that's greater than 1. Excel finds only oranges and avocados have a unit measure of each and a price greater than 1, so it adds up the associated count value for oranges and avocados to return a value of 48. In our second example, I simply dropped the second criteria range and tested just for the unit of measure, or each. As expected, Excel added up the count of the apples and the other fruits, but did not include the grapes because they have a unit of measure of kilograms. While Sumifs does not require a second range criteria pair, this is where the power of Sumifs comes to play. You can have up to 127 range criteria pairings. Holy smokes! Now let's look quickly at Autosum and status bar sums. The Autosum button is found on the home ribbon, usually to the right side. If you do not find it there, you can also access it from the Formulas ribbon on the left side. Excel tries to be intuitive here. If you insert an Autosum to the right of a series of numbers, Excel adds up the numbers in a contiguous range to the left. If you insert the Autosum below a series of numbers, Excel adds up the numbers in a contiguous range above it. The Autosum button also works with average, count, max, and min functions. Those we'll look at another day. The last thing I wanted to show you is the sum function on the status bar. When you select a series of numbers, Excel very nicely sums them, counts them, and calculates the average of them, which is then displayed on your status bar. In summary, today we looked at the following functions: sum, sumif, sumifs, Autosum, and status bar sums. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up, share with your friends, and leave me a comment below. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe and click on the bell icon to be notified when new videos are posted. Don't forget to check out our website where you can find other free stuff like seamless patterns, deco toners, illustrator brushes, and page borders. That's at www.lillizzy.net. Cheers!